Thank you, Roger. And hi, everyone out there. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for a conversation on the theme of innovation, for a conversation about the West Kauai Energy Project. If you don't know what that is, you will soon find out. My name is Brittany Lyte. I'm a reporter at Honolulu Civil Beat. I also live on Kauai, where KIUC, the Kauai Island Utility Cooperative, is developing a unique solar and hydropower plant called the West Kauai Energy Project. Our panelist this evening is David Bissell, who has served as the president and CEO of KIUC since 2010. So no one better to introduce us to this project. In 2017, KIUC drew international attention when the world's largest utility-scale solar plus battery facility developed by Tesla was unveiled. Now KIUC and AES Corp, a developer of a wide variety of generating plants, are together developing an integrated pumped storage, hydropower, solar, and battery project, the first of its kind in the world. Upon completion, KIUC will exceed 80% in renewable sourced energy. The project itself would provide up to a quarter of Kauai's power supply and gradually lower its 34,000 customers' electric bills. David earned his bachelor's degree in accounting and finance from the State University of New York at Brockport and his M.B.A. from the Kelley School of Business at Indiana University. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Brittany, and aloha, everyone.
So David, you've been in this job for about 11 years now. Tell us, what have been your overarching goals in your position as the head at KIUC? And what is it like being in your position at a time when there's such a dramatic push to transition to renewable energy?
Thank you. It's been very exciting in my position for the 11 years as CEO. And before that, I was a CFO, so I came over in a financial role and was promoted to CEO. But my goals really are the goals of my board of directors. KIUC is a cooperative. We're the only cooperative electric utility in the Hawaiian island chains. Every other island is served by HECO companies, which are investor-owned companies. So what makes us different as a cooperative is we have an elected board of directors, and it's not, we're nonprofit, so any of the earnings above what we need to operate and meet our debt go into the accounts of what we call members. We don't call them customers, they're members of the cooperative. And that's kind of a long introduction to our goal setting process here, but it goes back to the members, the people that pay the bills and are the residents of Kauai elect directors, and the directors come in and their job is to represent the interests of the people. So really, ever since we were formed as a cooperative in 2002, when a group of local business people and community members made a really outrageous attempt to come and buy the utility when it was for sale from Citizens Utility. And after a couple of attempts, they were successful, got it done. But back in 2002, and even before that, one of the big parts of wanting to be a cooperative was controlling the island's energy destiny. And the people did not want to be oil-fired, fossil fuel-based. They wanted the bills to be more stable. They realized that renewable energies could and should be part of our energy mix here on the island. We have vast natural resources. And really, since we were put together, that was part of our goal, was to become more resilient and internally focused, using our own resources instead of outside resources for our energy needs. So back as early as, I think it was 2006, our board of directors and one of their strategic plans came up with a 50% renewable target. I guess actually it was 2008. They set a 50% renewable target. Really out there, forward thinking, because we had about 5% renewable at that time, some legacy hydro projects. Really no other renewables were in the money, but they knew they had to get there, so they set a really forward-looking goal, and it was 50% by 2023 was the goal. So lo and behold, here we sit in 2021. Last year we hit 67% renewable on the island. So the goal setting by the people and by our directors really pushed us forward, and we were able to achieve.
And I would love if you could share a little bit more about the energy sources that power Kauai and how that has changed over time. And maybe beyond just being renewable, what are the different sources? And you know, since, was it 2002 that the co-op was formed? Since then, how has that changed?
Yeah, in 2002, when we were formed, the island was just transitioning out of the sugarcane era. The mills were either shut down or almost all gone. I think we had a little bit of gas, the byproduct of sugarcane biomass, basically on our grid at that time. That shortly went away as the last mills shut down. So we really started out with some legacy hydro plants from those mills, a few small ones that the old plantations had used for their energy needs. And when we started, it was about 6 or 8% of the energy was coming from the legacy hydro. The rest was coming from oil-fired sources between our two main power plants, Port Allen and Kauai, outside of Lihue here. So 92% oil-fired, a little bit of legacy hydro.
And fast forwarding to the future, is the goal to be completely renewable energy based, or will there always be a place for some of these other sources?
Well, the state's goal by 2045 is to be 100% renewable. We think we can get there. We feel we have to get there. When we say we're at 67% last year, that doesn't mean we've got a smooth track to get into 100%. However, a lot of growth could come from electric vehicles, for example. You always have to be developing new sources. You got to be looking forward. If the population grows, if load grows, you have to keep up with it. And a lot of technical challenges to operating a grid on full renewable, which is one of the biggest achievements we've had here, at least during the daylight hours when the sun is shining. We've routinely operated our grid on 100% renewable for hours at a time, for really thousands of hours last year. We're able to do that. So pretty much last year, every day the sun was shining brightly, we were at 100% renewable during those days, during those hours, which really no other grid in the country is doing, particularly with the high amount of solar powered energy we're using here. Because of course, solar, as clouds come over, you can gain or lose solar depending on where the clouds are at. So it's a real challenge for a grid. But our engineers and technicians have done really well. Our reliability was the best ever last year, even with all the solar, and really proud of what we've been able to accomplish.
So let's get into talking about the West Kauai Energy Project and how it fits into KIUC's renewable energy goals. You know, I'm curious if this project is perhaps in some way an answer to a problem, you know, or a challenge as you work to increase the amount of renewable energy sources. And first, I think, just in very simple terms, you know, we'll get into the details, but in simple terms, what is this project and why is it different?
This project it's really an old technology being applied in a new way. Pump storage hydro is out throughout the world. There's quite a few large pump storage hydro projects on the mainland even. And ultimately what it means is you're taking some source of energy, in our case, it's solar, a big solar field. They run pumps and they push water uphill. So when the energy is available, you push water uphill. In our case, we push it from one old irrigation reservoir, basically an irrigation pond. We have the PV, the solar energy will produce, run these big pumps during the daytime. When the sun's shining, push the water uphill to another reservoir, and it'll sit there and collect as the sun's producing. Now in the evening, or if it's a bad day when there's no sun or limited sun, we'll let that water come out of the upper reservoir, flow downhill through a pipe, spin a turbine, and make electricity. So it'll be stored. It's got nice value of water is a fairly efficient storage mechanism. A big reservoir can hold a lot of energy, and it's very good because when the sun's not shining, we just let it run downhill. I don't know if that was a simple explanation to start off on it, but that's the basic premise. Is about as simple as it gets, pushing water uphill and bringing it, letting it flow back down in the nighttime hours.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, this project would help overcome that challenge of just the simple fact that you can't, the sun isn't going to produce energy when it's dark outside.
Well, there's at least two challenges we're facing related to the sun. One is we've been a victim of our own success. We have so much solar and so much other renewables that when the sun's shining, and when I said we were at 100% renewable, that's great, but it means you can't take any more solar-based sun during the day because we don't have any load. We're, unlike a lot of areas, we're our own grid. There's no place outside of Kauai that the energy can come from or go to. So we have to perfectly balance the supply and the demand here. And that means if we're full up with renewables, we have to either curtail them, shut them down because we don't have enough load, or you have to be able to store the energy somewhere. And we've been successful. The project with Tesla, another two projects we've done with AES, who's also working with us on the pump storage project, have combined large PV fields with battery storage. And they've worked really well, but that's basically are holding 4 or 5 hours, 4 or 5 hours worth of energy. And still quite a bit of the solar time period is going into straight to our grid. Once the grid's full, as it is now, we have to take that energy and it's got to all be stored. So instead of having 5 hours or so, we need to have 8 or 12 hours of storage, and using battery technology, that gets to be very expensive. So problem it solved is we wanted to still bring in our cheapest energy source, which is photovoltaic, but we need to be able to store it in a cost-effective way. And the water in reservoirs is a very cost-effective way to have what we call bulk storage, longer duration storage. So every day we'll be able to store 12 hours of output, basically the entire daylight sun time solar production, and store that in water and have it sitting in the reservoir if we need to.
So this project proposes to activate some aging, underutilized infrastructure, irrigation, roads, reservoirs. It sounds like this project will have quite a few benefits for the broader community beyond the project's goals in itself. Can you talk with me a little bit more about how this project has some just natural community benefits based on what improvements you'll need to make anyway?
Yeah, it's really kind of a classic public-private partnership on this, where the state agencies, and I've talked about two, DLNR, Department of Land and Natural Resources, Department of Hawaiian Homelands, and the third one down on the plains is the Agribusiness Development Corporation. That's where has the farmland down there. Well, they simply don't have the money to invest into bringing these assets back up to their old condition where they're fully functional. And that's why they've been sitting there either empty or partially in use. We, as a utility, and because of what we're offsetting is the high cost of fossil fuel, we can invest in those resources, use them for dual purposes of irrigation for the farmland, both at the Department of Hawaiian Homelands area and down at the plains on the ADC land. We can use the irrigation system for that to serve agriculture, and we can realize from the investments in all that property to produce energy. So the energy makes the money available to get the benefits to the agriculture and to the community of better access, better recreation, and even such things as a better firefighting capabilities, having these big reservoirs that helicopters and the firefighters can go to if there's a wildfire in Kauai, which seem to be happening more and more frequently. They'll be able to go down, dip, get water quickly, and hopefully be able to put fires out quicker. So a lot of benefits, but it's really driven by ultimately this transition off oil. Cheaper, we can invest a lot of money and resources and still have lower cost energy for the people of Kauai, so it becomes a win-win.
What has the community response been like so far, if you could sum it up? I mean, anytime there's change or something new, you know, it takes a while for folks to digest. What kind of support or not has this project gotten?
I think in general, it's been very, very well supported by the community. A lot of people are excited about it. A lot of people on the west side are excited about getting these resources back into productive use. And in fact, really since 2011, when I first became CEO, I heard from community members all the time, why aren't you guys doing more hydro? People on Kauai recognize that there's a lot of hydro resources. A lot of people you'd see in the grocery store or at Costco would be always say, hey, why don't we do this? Do more. So we started looking hard at it. And ultimately the best project that we found on the whole island was on the west side. And the West Kauai Energy Project really encompasses a tremendous amount of benefits. So I think the support's been good. It's always in today's world, you always have to communicate. You got to work with the community really from start of the idea as a conceptual idea all the way to a completion, and it won't end there. You still have to work with them as it's operating. So it's going to be a continual community focus from us, and we think it's very good for the community. It'll bring benefits for decades, and I think most of the people in the community recognize that.
And if the project does receive all of its approvals, do you have even just an estimate of how long the construction phase might take?
It's about 2 years. And that's being conservative on the construction, depending on, it's going to be weather dependent and trying to get through, have 2 dry seasons to make sure they can meet the deadlines.
And so apart from, you know, the regulatory process that you're going through now, what challenges lie ahead that you can see now? I mean, what are the major hurdles or just you know, challenges that you see ahead in order to get this online and keep it running smoothly?
Well, like I said, we have to get through the permitting and the regulatory side. We also, outside of constructing it, which will have its challenges, certainly doable, but I'm personally concerned about inflation coming in and making the project less attractive for AES as the developer of it. They can certainly handle a reasonable amount of inflation, but if we get much higher than expected levels of inflation or interest rates go way up, that could stress the project. So the economy is a concern. I think it's a manageable concern. I don't see interest rates going 12% or anything like in the 70s that would put a project on risk, but it is pretty uncertain times now and really unparalleled times on the environment, on the economy. So that's a concern. Construction will be a challenge. It'll be I think the engineers and the construction people are more than confident they can do it and get it done in the time frame. And really here, and as any project done in Hawaii and more throughout the country, we have to continue to engage with the community and keep the community informed and working with it and continue to build support on the project.
David, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but you know, KIUC has piloted some really groundbreaking, innovative projects, as we've been discussing. What is this, you know, what do you think is coming next 10 years from now? I mean, you must have some window into what's not quite possible yet, but coming in terms of, renewable energy sources and how to do this in a way that's more economical and better for the environment. Can you share at all just maybe some projections of what things might look like in the near future?
Yeah, thank you for that question. My crystal ball says we're going to start shifting our focus more from renewable energy generation here to technologies, bringing in sophisticated systems to manage load, to manage demand, particularly as electric vehicles come more into play. We have to have a way to make sure that every person on Kauai 20 years from now is not coming in and plugging in their electric vehicle at the exact same time. That would be a tremendous challenge for the system. We'd have to put in much more generation, work much harder to meet our renewable goals. So we have to continue to focus on technology, how to manage demand, how to manage our load, to make sure that this technology is good and that we're eliminating carbon from the oil-based energy that's going into fueling our vehicles today, to using clean renewable energy to go into the vehicles. So that's going to be a challenge, how much load comes on, how much more energy is driven by the transition in the transportation industry, I think is going to be the major push. Technologies, it seems like PV panels, they've gotten radically better over the last 5 or 10 years. I think they'll continue to improve and pricing will get better, but it's not going to go a whole lot lower than it is today. Storage is the issue, and hopefully battery technology continues to get more robust and cheaper. President Biden's got a big push on trying to lower the cost of storage. So if we can continue to have lower cost PV, even if it's a little bit lower, and battery prices drop, we can use that to supplement what's probably going to be load growth from electric vehicles.
Very interesting. We do have one more question from the audience. This is from Sequoia. It says, Kauai residents, especially those of the west side, are concerned about KIUC's water use. Did the project move from a closed loop system to one which will harvest and distribute an average of 11 million GPD? Can you please explain the 2017 settlement that caused this change? Can you address that, David?
Yeah, I'd be pleased to. This project's gone through a lot of gyrations in the 10 or 12 years we've been investigating hydro on the west side. It actually started out as a 100% flow-through hydro when we were first looking at it. It evolved into a concept of a total closed loop pump storage hydro back around 2014 or so. And then as we went, there was a water mediation process that was instigated by a lawsuit by Earth Justice and some of the community groups against waste in that system. That was around the 2015 period, I think that took place. KIUC was a party to the mediation on that. Mediation took a year and a half or so and had a groundbreaking historical settlement around water, where all the parties came together, the agriculture interests on the Mana Plains, DHHL, the electric utility, and the citizens groups represented by Earth Justice came together, working with the Commission on Water Resource Management, making sure that the streams were taken care of and the environment was taken care of. And it was a really groundbreaking. Water disputes typically can take a decade or more here in Hawaii. Parties came together, everybody balanced the efforts, came up with, might not have made everyone happy, nobody got everything they wanted, everybody gains a little bit, everybody loses a little bit in a settlement process, but all the interests were weighed and a determination was made on how much water was needed for agriculture, how much was needed to stay in the streams. We ultimately then formed the project around the amount of water that was allocated for DHHL and for agriculture use. The water was going to be transported. It made the most sense that we as the utility would help transport it and use that to make energy on its way down to DHHL and on its way down to the plains for agriculture purposes. So that was all. It was really a groundbreaking mediation done then. And at that time, during the mediation process, the project evolved into the integrated pump storage hydro and flow through hydro that it is today.